Now, price controls. Okay, sometimes prices go right out of hand. Sometimes prices go right out of hand. In fact, I'm hearing the story now that prices are gone right out of hand with regards to rent. If we look around Clarenville, if we look around St. John's, or we look around Halifax, or let's look around Toronto, right? We know that the price of rent has gone up fantastically. Wow. It's hard to find an inexpensive place to live that's fit to live in. So, who is affected by this most? Obviously the poor, right? People who can't afford to pay that higher price are the ones that are most drastically impacted by it. So we got poor families out on the street. The kids are sleeping in the ditch. It's not an acceptable situation. Government's going to look at that and say, we can't have that. This is a rich country. We cannot have people sleeping in the streets. We can't have children going hungry. We just cannot have it. It is not acceptable in a country like Canada to have this going on. So politically, that argument makes sense, doesn't it? I can understand why government would be very concerned about high rent prices. So what government often does is they create a rule or law that says you can't charge any more than X number of dollars. Okay? So you cannot charge, if the market rate for rent is $1,200 a month, and the government says the most you can charge is $800 a month. Okay? Now that's great for those poor families. Isn't it wonderful? It meets the need of government to say, we need to ensure that people have places to live that are relatively inexpensive. But what does it do from the supplier's point of view? Okay, let's assume that you own one of those apartments. Now, you own one of those apartments that you could get $1,200 a month for. Government comes down and says, sorry, you cannot charge $1,200 a month for it. The most you can charge for it is $800 a month. How are you going to feel about that? You're the renter now. You're the person providing the rental accommodation. How are you going to feel about that? Any thoughts?
Paul?
Yeah.
You mind repeating that just one more time?
Okay, so effectively, you own an apartment in downtown Toronto. You can sell it for $1,200 a month. You can rent it for $1,200 a month, okay? And you've been doing that. And you're happy. Government comes down and says, sorry, Chris, you cannot charge $1,200 a month. The most you can charge is $800 a month. We have a new policy in place to make sure that people can find an affordable place to live. What are you going to feel about that?
Not very good.
Why is that?
Because be less of a profit, correct?
Right. You could get $1,200 for it. Now you're being told the most you can get for it is $800 a month. That's a $400 difference. That's money taken right out of your pocket. You're the owner, and you're ticked off with government because they have told you the most you can charge is $800 a month. So what are you going to do with that rental apartment? Let's say you're losing money on it now. What are you going to do with it?
Sell it.
Exactly. You're going to sell it. And the moment you sell it, let's say I buy it. I buy it from you and say, I'm not renting it. I'm living in it. I'm moving to Toronto. I'm going to live in it. So what happened to that apartment in the market? What happens to it and all the others? Because the same thing is going to happen to everyone else. What's going to happen to the total number of rented apartments or rentable apartments in that marketplace?
The number is going to go down.
Right. So government has come in good intentions to say, we need to keep the price of rent low so that more people can find an affordable place to rent. Follow me? At the same time, the people who own those apartments are saying, I'm not renting that for $800 a month. I'm going to sell it. And when I sell it, that rental accommodation comes off the market. So effectively, the rent control, it solves the problem by keeping the rents low, but it creates a problem by reducing the number of rental apartments for sale. So effectively, the solution causes a problem. And this is it. You know, more people would like to rent at a government-controlled level, but the apartment owners are unwilling to build more rental units if they can't charge the higher rent. As a result, you're going to get a shortage of apartments. Okay, so that's effectively what's happening there. Is this idea of rent control sounds like a good idea? It sounds like a good idea, but it's not such a good idea. And this happens for real. There's a case in point from last year. Ontario to freeze rent for some families, promising a new bill this fall. So Ontario said, we're going to put rent control in because the prices in Ontario were just so out of whack. The problem is that's going to reduce the total number. And, you know, you don't see that in the media. It reduces the total number of apartments for rent. Okay. So this is really what we're looking at, affordable housing. So here is this rent control graphically represented, okay? So effectively, what this thing is called is a price ceiling. And a price ceiling is really a maximum price that government imposes on the market, the maximum price. So let's assume here we got goods and the price. Let's assume the price ceiling is $2. Maybe it's $2,000 a month. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But the fact is that government has imposed a $2 a month ceiling right here, this line. The market price for that item is $5. In other words, if the market were free and nobody was tiddling with the market, you could sell it for $5. Government imposes a $2 maximum. You could get $3 more for it, but government said, no, sorry, you can't. So what are you going to do? You're going to reduce the quantity. You and everyone else, the market, I have to talk about not just an individual supply, but the market supply is going to decrease by a good bit. So if there was 5 supplied before, now there's only 2. You know, there's a few slum landlords out there for sure who will continue to supply, no doubt. So the supply drops. And this causes a shortage. The quantity demanded, listen, I'm a poor person and I'm finding the news. I read in the news that the rental prices are lower, and I'm thinking, wow, that's great. And I'm in Newfoundland. And I read that. I'm going to Toronto now because there's lots of jobs in Toronto and the prices are low to rent. So what happens is more and more and more demanders enter the market. In other words, people go to Toronto because they know that rental prices have been controlled. So we got a flood of people moving into Toronto, trying to move into Toronto. They're looking for these apartments. There's less of those apartments on the market. There's more people looking for the apartments. This is what creates a shortage in supply. So there's 2 being offered. There's 8 being demanded. So there's a shortage of 6. So let's say the government reconsiders, okay? Let's assume that government looks at that and says, oh my goodness, you know, we thought we were solving a problem. We actually created a problem. Let's bring up the price. So the minimum price then is now $5. Let's assume that government says, okay, we reconsidered. Let's bring the price up to $5. Now the question is, if the price ceiling is $5, what effect does it have on the market? So what effect do you think it would have on the market at $5? Maybe I'll rephrase it. What was the equilibrium price before government got involved? $5. The equilibrium price was $5. If government puts the price ceiling at $5, what impact will the price ceiling have on the equilibrium? Simple answer, nothing. No effect. Because the market price is $5. The price ceiling is $5. So the price ceiling is not effective at all. If the price ceiling were moved up to, say, $7, the market price is $5, the price ceiling would have no impact whatsoever. Okay? Because the actual market price is less than the price ceiling. So this whole issue of price ceiling, and this is for real. I mean, in New York City is a classic example of where price ceilings came in many years ago. In the 70s, New York grew quite a bit. A lot of people moved to New York, Manhattan in particular. If you want to talk about Manhattan, which is the business district, it's an island in the middle of New York where all the tall buildings are, the World Trade Centers, etc. On the shoreline around Manhattan, as you go over the two big bridges there are hundreds and thousands of these apartments, and they're all owned by the city. The city owned the apartments, and in fact, they imposed rent control on them back in the 70s, and the way the rules were written is that if you lived, as long as you lived in the apartment, the rent would be set at $500 a month. Today, in Manhattan, which is one of the richest places, most expensive places to live in the world, there are people living in these apartments for $500 a month because they've lived there for the last 40 years. And so there's loads of these apartments. And the city have to own them because nobody would supply them at that price, right? So effectively, the city has gone into the rental business as of the 1970s because the only way to get around this problem that government really has is to own the buildings themselves so that they can charge low rent. And we see that Newfoundland and Labrador Housing, for example, own a lot of homes, and that the market will not supply them because the price is too low. And we've seen through this example that, no one's going to build a house if they actually don't get the market value for it. So what happens is government buys it. Government supplies it, or owners of the homes get subsidized somehow or another. So that's that issue of rental. And rental is a real issue. So are there other ways besides putting some sort of a price ceiling on place? Yeah, there is. You can leave the market alone. First of all, let the market work. If the price goes to $1,200 a month, let the price go to $1,200 a month. If people are sitting out on the street because they have no place to live, let them sit out on the street. So, the market is a good way to solve the problem of shortage of supply, but it doesn't solve the problem of shortage of demand. I mean, the fact is that people are still going to be looking for places, and if they can't find the places, you'll have people out in the street. So that doesn't address the problem to the extent that government would like. We also have another method called rationing. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I was telling you about Winston Churchill and World War II and some of the problems that Britain had because of the production possibilities. They either produce capital goods or consumer goods. Well, gasoline was considered a consumer good. So one of the things that happened in World War II was that gasoline production dropped phenomenally for consumer use. They were making gas to run the airplanes, but not gas to run motor cars. So you just couldn't get gas. So in order to solve the problem of the shortage in England at the time, they had what was called rationing. So effectively, you could get 2 gallons of gas a week. That's all you could get. Okay? So this is what rationing does, is it says you can only allocate so much. Now, that doesn't work so well for apartments. You can't ration someone an apartment so you can live there 2 days a week. For things like gasoline, apples, flour, vegetables, nylons. Nylons was another thing that was difficult to find in World War II because the material was used for airplane production, so women didn't have nylons. So they rationed it. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is something called producer preference. Producer preference means that the producer really decides who gets it. If I'm supplying apartments and I like you and I don't like someone else, you'll get the apartment. They won't. That's what a producer preference is really just the producer decides who to sell it to. First come, first serve. That's a pretty common one. The college uses that for its programs. If you apply, let's assume there are 13 spaces available. The college calls it seats. There's 13 seats available. The first 13 that apply that meet the criteria are the ones that get in. And probably the one that is most common but illegal is something called the black market. The black market is when people secretly or illegally break the rationing rule. So, hey, buddy, I can rent your apartment for $1,200 a month, but don't tell the government. So, it's illegal high prices that are being charged that basically defies the law. This is common. You buy tickets. You got a popular concert. You want to go see, I don't know, Shania Twain or Mick Jagger. Let's go see Mick because Mick might not be around much longer. So obviously, Rolling Stones tickets are going to be very difficult to find. So what happens is ticket scalpers go in, buy the tickets for whatever the price they are, and sell them at a higher price because they know they can get the market. Those sorts of things are illegal, but they're very hard to stop. Okay, any questions on that? So that was from, if we think about that whole issue of the price ceiling, it's really it manages it manages the suppliers. The supplier is the one that is addressed there by saying the most you can charge is whatever. But there's another type of approach that government could have too, and that is limiting, or not limiting, ensuring that a price is a fair price for the supplier of the product. Wages are a good example of that. We see the idea of a price floor embodied in the minimum wage legislation. Okay, you have to make $12.75 an hour, or whatever the minimum wage is right now. You have the rule says you have to make that much. Now, industry and business hate the minimum wage. The reason they hate the minimum wage is they argue that, well, what if someone is not worth $12.75 an hour? I can get people easily and paying $10 an hour, but you're telling me I got to pay them $12.75 an hour. So that's basically what's going on. So it really is an unskilled labor problem where price floors come in to address that issue. So here's an example. In the news, NDP minister of the member of the Legislative Assembly, which is an MHA here in Newfoundland, say a living wage is really important, and they need living wage. In other words, you got to make enough money. This is what's called a price floor, effectively, and we see lots of that in the media. So price floors, first of all, they only work if the floor price is above the equilibrium price. Okay, so let's assume that the equilibrium. Let's just flesh this little graphic out here a bit. Let's assume that the equilibrium price for wages, we'll call it wages. So I'm living in a little town, and I know that I can pay $5 an hour for someone to paint my fence. Okay? The demand and supply are such that I can get someone to paint my fence for $5 an hour. The government comes in and says to me, no, Paul, you cannot pay someone $5 an hour. You have to pay them $8 an hour. You have to pay them $8 an hour. Okay, so I know I could do it for $5. Government is telling me I have to pay $8. So they say you got to pay 60% more than what I could pay. So I'm not very happy as someone buying the services, right? I could have got some for $5 and I'm forced to pay them $8. So what's that going to do to me? Now, I am the demander, and I'm buying these I'm buying these services. So I'm going to paint my fence. I was going to hire 2 people. Now I'm going to hire 1 because I can't afford to pay 2. I got to pay $8 an hour times 2. That's $16 an hour. And really, I could have only spent 10 if I bought 2 at $5 an hour. So now I'm only going to buy 1. I'm only going to buy 1. So what's going to happen is the demand, from my point of view, the demand right here in the green line, the demand for labor is going to drop. I'm only hiring 1 as opposed to 2, half the number. So you're going to see the demand for labor drop. So here's what happens here. If government left us alone, we'd hire this number. But seeing that they imposed this salary, we're only going to hire this minute. So I would have hired 5. Now I'm only going to hire 2. Okay. Meanwhile, from the student point of view, let's assume this is students who are hired. Students say, whoo, wow, instead of $5 an hour, now we guaranteed to make $8 an hour if we go to work. I'm going to work. I was watching Netflix, but now it's worth my trouble to go out and look for a job. So we've got a lot more students entering the job market. So what we have is the supply of labor goes up. So because the supply of labor goes up, thanks to the price floor, the supply was only this, it was only 5, but because the price floor exists now and people are encouraged to go out and actually work, there's more people working. So what we've got is a lot more people offering themselves to work, but not so many people, not so many businesses willing to hire them. So we've got a surplus of labor. In other words, there's more people wanting to work than there are jobs. And this is what we call unemployment by any other name. So the argument that business use against a minimum wage is that it causes unemployment. If you were to think about it, more people are drawn into the labor force if the minimum wage is higher. More people are coming out and saying, yeah, I'm going to go to work. Employers, though, from an employer's point of view, it's costing a lot more to hire someone. So they're going to say, I can't afford to hire that many people, so I'm not going to hire as many. They're too expensive. So minimum wage, the argument that labor use, that management use, is it costs jobs. It costs jobs because of this. And the people that are affected most by this are low-income, low-skilled workers, the poor. So because you got minimum wage trying to help the poor, the fact is if you impose a minimum wage that's too high, it's going to hurt the poor because they won't get hired because there's just no demand anymore. So price floors cause a big problem for government. Now, in politics, what's going on in politics right now, you will know that the labor unions, a lot of you labor unions have a promotional campaign on now to say, we want a minimum $15 an hour minimum wage because that, and here's the rationale for that. It makes perfect sense. If the average person works 2,000 hours a year, $15 an hour, that's $35,000 a year. That's the poverty line. If you pay any less than that, you're living below the poverty line. So unions are saying we need to pay $15 an hour. That's the union argument. The business owner's argument is if you're forcing us to pay $15 an hour, we're only going to hire half as many people because you're only worth $7.50 an hour. So we're only going to hire half number, and we'll put in, like Walmart has done, electronic cash registers. We'll put on more internet buying. We'll do all that. You're going to cost jobs by imposing a minimum wage. So government is torn. They want to help people out, but in the meantime, they got to keep industry happy too by not having it too high. So this is the problem with this idea of trying to create a minimum wage or trying to set a price floor for things. In other words, a minimum price that artificially raises the price above the equilibrium and causes some problem. Now, it only applies to low value labor, people with low skills. People with higher skills are going to make more than the minimum wage anyway, so the minimum wage won't affect them. It's irrelevant, right? The minimum wage, for example, is less than the equilibrium price for doctors. So it doesn't affect them. But if you're a student or if you're a young person, it does affect you. So this is one of the big issues that are floating around with regards to price floors and minimum wage. Any questions? Okay. We saw that if we charge too much, price floors, for example, we charge too much, it causes surpluses. I'll give you an example of price floor that drives me nuts in Newfoundland. If I go up to any store, I will pay over $4 for a carton of milk. Meanwhile, I can buy Pepsi for 99 cents. Okay? Now, Pepsi is killing people. Milk is helping people, but people are not buying milk because it's too expensive. Well, why is milk so expensive? Well, the reason is that there's a price floor for milk. Government and the dairy industry, or the agricultural industry in Newfoundland, is a very powerful lobby. They have said, in order for farmers to continue producing milk in Newfoundland, they have to get enough money to make it worth their trouble. So if we're going to preserve the milk industry in Newfoundland, we need to make a set amount. And how do we get set amount? We impose a price floor. So there is a minimum price that milk can be sold at, and it's high. If I go to Bangor, Maine, which is right across the border in New Brunswick, okay? If I could cross the border, I go to Bangor, I can buy a gallon, a US gallon, which is about 4 liters of milk for $2.25. So I can buy 4 liters for $2.25 American. So let's say that's $3 Canadian. So milk in the States is about half or less than half of the price that it is here in Newfoundland. Yet in the same breath, Newfoundland says we need kids to eat healthier. We want them to drink milk. It's better on their teeth. It's better for their bones. Yet, wow, milk is really expensive. I can understand people not buying milk. They can't afford it. So the price floor helps the farmers, but it doesn't do anything for the poor kids. And so, what does this do? Well, it means that all kinds of farmers are going on to it's worth the trouble for Newfoundland farmers to produce milk. So we see a lot of milk being produced in Newfoundland. The problem is that us Newfoundlanders don't drink a lot of milk because it's so darn expensive. And we've been raised not to drink milk. So we got a lot of milk being produced, not a lot of people drinking it. What do we do with it? Well, there are some options. From a producer's point of view, there are some options. The first option is to stop producing it. Turn your cows into hamburger. Okay? That's one thing that you can do in order, as a farmer, that's one of the things you can do in order to kind of get rid of the extra milk that you can't sell because the price is too high. The other thing is storing it. Now you say, well, you can't store milk; it goes bad. Well, you can store it. You can freeze it, or you can turn it into powdered milk, or you can do something with it to make it last longer. Turn it into ice cream. These sorts of things. And that gets into our next one where you convert it. So a lot of milk in Newfoundland is converted. A lot of milk is converted into cheese. And that's another health issue because cheese is full of fat. And one way that we get rid of all the fat, and people are eating a lot more cheese than they ever did, thanks to pizza and the like, is that the fat that is skimmed off milk because nobody wants the fat is being put into the cheese, and we're eating it that way. So converting it. So you turn the milk into any number of things, and that happens. You can send it off to the foreign market. Sometimes you can put it in a box and send it over to the poor kids anywhere else in the world. We see that happen a lot. Canada ships a lot of stuff. You see a Herc being delivering stuff to Ethiopia there. That's pretty common. We ship a lot of stuff abroad, and a lot of stuff we ship is stuff that has artificially high prices on it in Canada, such as grain, milk, eggs, these sorts of things. We bring them into foreign markets. Now, I got the word dumping there. A lot of the word dumping is a dirty word with regards to international trade. Effectively, what it means is that we go sell a product in some other country for less than we sell it for here. So that effectively means we're taking the product out of here, shipping it to somewhere else, and selling it for less. And what it does is it undermines their industry. So if the United States had a milk industry and we shipped all that stuff down, all the extra milk down to the United States for less than what they can produce it for, they're going to argue that we're dumping it. In other words, we're trying to get their market by undercutting their prices. So that's what dumping is. Donating is another thing, as I say, we fly it abroad. You know what happens to milk? Most milk, it gets destroyed. It goes down the drain. And that happens a lot. They don't talk about it, but there's a lot of milk dumped in Canada, as there is with a lot of other food. And quotas, which is a way that government handles it here. In order to become a farmer of milk in Newfoundland, you have to get a quota. In other words, you're allowed to produce so much milk, and that maintains the production. And government don't want too much produced because you can't keep the prices high if there's too much milk on the market. So this is one of these test your understanding questions here related to this idea of the floors or the ceilings. So it says the market for corn is described in the figure below. So let's just take a look at the figure below here. Here's the supply of corn across a range of prices. Here's the demand for corn across a range of prices. We see that the equilibrium, which is $3.50 and 5 million bushels. Okay? So $3.50 and 5 million bushels quantity is the equilibrium. So in equilibrium, what is the total sales revenue being received by producers? Okay, let's figure out what the sales revenue, price times quantity is sales revenue. So 350 times 5, okay, $3.50 times 5 is 17.5. See where I got that? Excuse me if I haven't got it multiplied right. Forgive me, but the fact of the matter, it is 350 times 5.
No, it's correct.
Good, thank you. B, suppose the government now imposes a $4 per kilogram price floor. Okay, let me just do this here. Hello. I gotta draw a line, so just bear with me while I try to draw a line without causing too much grief here. Okay. Now line. For some reason, I can't draw a line for the life of me. Anyway, I'll give it one more shot. No. Anyway, whatever I'm doing doesn't seem to be working correctly. There we go. No. Okay. Okay, so $4 is the per kilogram. Okay, what we got, if $4 per kilogram, this is draw a line across right here. This is effectively what this does, okay? Now, what quantity will now be demanded? Well, let's just take a look at $4. Here's the demand. So the quantity demanded is this intersection point right here. So here's the line going across the intersection point, and that's 4 million kilograms. You see that? See where I got that? At
Yep.
$4, 4 million kilograms. What quantity will farmers produce? So we just go across $4. We look down here at 6. So there's 4 demanded, 6 produced. What quantity will government purchase? So government is the one that imposed this price floor. So what we have then is this minus this. 6 minus 4 is 2. So government will have to purchase 2 million bushels. Right? Government is the one who imposed this. Government will have to buy it. How much will it cost government to purchase the surplus? Well, $4 is the price per bushel times 2 million bushels. That's $8 million.
That's good. Yeah, I see it.
Given the same graph, what is the effect of a government-imposed price ceiling of $4? Okay, so what is the effect? Well, the effect is that there's more supplied than there is demanded. This will create a surplus. That's effectively what we got on the go there, a surplus of 2 million units. Okay. So that's that issue right there. The final issue I wanted to take a look at this morning was quotas. Now, quotas are focused on the quantity as opposed to the price. So using production quotas instead of targeting market prices, the government aims to affect the total output coming onto the market. So we set a quota for milk production, for example. It does this by introducing legislation to prevent producers from exceeding a stipulated limit on the production or sale of a product. Now, there's all kinds of quotas in Newfoundland. There's a fish quota, there's a farm quota, there's all kinds of quotas, always aimed at suppliers. So effectively, if we look at a quota, what a quota does is it creates this is the line right here. Look, 4 million is the most that can be produced. So that's the quantity. So the equilibrium price is $4. So we see here, the equilibrium price is $4. So without a quota, let's just forget a quota for a second. So the demand is that, supply is that, comes to an equilibrium that. So imposing a quota of 4 million. So the most that can be produced by the supplier is 4 million. So that's all that can be done. So effectively then what that does is the quota becomes the effective supply line, the new supply. So the intersection point is $6. So what a quota does is it drives up the price. So the price went from $4 up to $6 because there was less produced than the market wanted. The market wanted 6 million. The market only got 4 million. Now, if the quota was put right here, let's assume the quota was 6 million, the quota would have no effect on the market because the market was only going to produce 6 million anyway because that was the market point. If, for example, the quota was 8 million, it would have no effect either because the quota, the demand at equilibrium was only for 6. So quotas only work when they're below the minimum, below the equilibrium, I should say, below the equilibrium supply. So quotas are pretty straightforward. They're very focused on the supply side. So the market for soybeans is described in the accompanying figure. So we got soybeans here, supply, demand. In equilibrium, what is the total sales revenue being received by the producer? So we got equilibrium here. Well, let's look. $400 per ton is the price at equilibrium, and 8. Okay? So if we think about 4 times 8, that's 3,200. 3,200 would be the equilibrium revenue. Suppose the government now imposes a production quota of 6 million tons, okay? So 6 million tons then will become the new supply line. It will go straight up. Oops, don't do that. It goes straight up. So effectively, it would intersect right here. So what will be the new price per ton? The new price per ton would be the intersection point of the demand line, which would now be $600. Do you see where I got that? What will be the total sales revenue? Well, $600 per ton times 6 tons. I'm trying to convert 3,600 is what it would be, but in millions of tons. So I'll just say 3,600. So this is what you'd end up with, the 3,600. You see where I got that? And I said that was the last one. Actually, excise tax is the last one. Sorry. Excise taxes are taxes that are put on stuff that we buy. So effectively, the more we buy, the more tax we pay. Excise tax, for example, exists on gasoline. So about half the cost of gas that we buy, when we go buy a liter of gas, about half the cost of it is taxes. I don't think it's exactly half, but it's a good chunk of it is taxes. So effectively, if you buy 1 liter of gas, you're paying that amount of tax. You buy 10 liters, you're paying 10 times as much. So an excise tax is connected with the quantity we buy. So the carbon tax that was brought in is 4 cents a liter. So that's driven up the price of gas. Our gasoline prices have risen 4 cents a liter because of that. So carbon taxes are now levied by most Canadian provinces, and they generate considerable revenue for the government. Gee, what did you think about it? How many liters are sold every day? Multiply it by 4 cents a liter. That's a lot of money. But in addition, they're often introduced to reduce the production and consumption of these products for either health or environmental reasons. So the reason, the rationale behind the carbon tax on gasoline, for example, at $4 a liter is it will make gas more expensive. So you and I will want to buy less gas. It will curb the demand for gas. And obviously, we're not buying as much. We're not burning as much. We're not burning as much. It reduces CO2 emissions and it saves the planet. So that's the basic theory behind a carbon tax. They're called carbon taxes. So these excise taxes are designed to get people to use or consume less. That's the whole point of it. So it's kind of contradiction when I hear some political parties saying the price of gas is too high in Newfoundland, but it's supposed to be high. That's the point of the carbon tax, is to make the gas price high so people will find it and buy less. So the imposition of an excise tax or a sales tax will decrease the supply of the product. That only makes sense. There's less of it being supplied. So, energy drinks, we got an example here. So before there's any tax, here's a range of prices, $5 through $11. The quantity demanded at that level is 8 through to 2. As the price goes up, for example, the quantity demanded goes down. That's just basic supply and demand right here. These first two is really the basic concept there. The quantity supplied, we saw that. This is, as I say, the basic supply and demand. But if we impose a tax, what we're going to see is it will effectively increase the price of it, which reduces the supply. So this is the kind of the net effect. So the effect of a $2 per 6-pack excise tax is to shift the supply curve up from S1 to S plus the tax. So we're seeing $2 go up because that tax drives up effectively it drives up the price, and it would affect the supply line. The equilibrium price would increase from 8 to 9, and the equilibrium quantity decreases because as people obviously look at it and say the price is higher, I'm going to buy less of it. So these are commonly used. These are commonly used in order to be able to get a grasp of sales and slow sales down for stuff that people don't want using, such as gasoline.